What a week it has been for the candidates in the race for the White House. For more now, I'm joined by my colleague and host of Up with Chris Hayes, Mr. Chris Hayes himself. Welcome.
Mr.
In a somewhat casually dressed and attired. Chris, there's a story moving right now. The latest example of what's being described as Mitt Romney's flip-flopping. This on climate change. Here's this Think Progress video.
My view is that we don't know what's causing climate change on this planet.
Now, here's the problem with that, Chris. In June, he said, I believe the world is getting warmer and I believe humans have contributed to that. So I guess the polls are suggesting that they're swinging the other way, so we should go the other way?
Yeah, so he actually, this is now the second time I just was looking at, he had made noises to this effect in August, and it was only a matter of time until he ran away from it. I mean, it really wasn't only a matter of time, because what has happened is Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and the sort of entire ecosystem of the right-wing media has converted the empirical data about climate, the climate science consensus, into a culture war issue, into an issue that is like abortion, gay rights, these sort of like hot button, cheeks flushed issues that are signs of your sort of tribal loyalty to the conservative crew. And so it is impossible in the eyes of Republican primary voters, particularly the hardcore conservative ones who are going to show up at the polls in the early primary states, to believe in the scientific consensus on global warming and also to be a conservative.
But what's bizarre about this, Chris, is that a number of evangelical scholars over the last 2 years, and I've read some of their books, have written about the fact that actually they believe in climate change. So this is no longer a religious issue.
No, and what's really depressing about it is it's actually gone backwards. So there was a period, remember a few years ago, Al Gore was doing ads with Pat Robertson about climate change.
Yes.
And Romney is not the first Republican presidential candidate who has had to stare down the skeleton in his closet of being reasonable and empirically minded on climate change. Tim Pawlenty had the same problem because he acknowledged the science behind climate change when he was governor of Minnesota.
So does John Huntsman.
And John Huntsman, who was forced to tweet, I believe in the science of climate change, call me crazy, and which did not endear him to Republican primary voters.
Okay, so that's Mitt. What about Herman Cain? Virtually no infrastructure.
What about Herman Cain?
No infrastructure in the first four primary states. Today's in Alabama, which votes in March. It isn't clear. Or is
It's a nice state, Alabama.
Yeah, I know, but is he running for president, or is he simply bidding for more opportunities to make motivational speeches and sell books?
I cannot see what is in the heart of Herman Cain, but I would say this. I do think we should not discount the fact that broadcast airtime on the Fox News network is the single most important thing for a Republican presidential candidate in the primary to do. There is no analog on the liberal side to the control that Fox has over the information received by your average Republican primary voter. Ergo, if you are achieving maximum Fox exposure, which Herman Cain, as studied by Media Matters, is, he's led the candidates, I think, in the last 3-month period.
He absolutely has.
Then maybe organization is an afterthought, maybe pressing the flesh and going to town halls. I mean, who wants to go to bingo halls in Manchester, New Hampshire?
But I always thought that was what campaigning was about. You press the flesh, you kiss babies, you have coffee in diners, you meet the voters. You're saying, no, you appear on Fox News.
I'm saying it is possible. It is possible that the conditions are such in the media environment amongst the Republican primary voters that is less important. We saw Barack Obama, how important it was to him, particularly in Iowa, right? Where his people on the ground beat out Hillary's people on the ground, beat out John Edwards.
Every time.
Absolutely. It was a huge victory. But I do wonder, it's a fascinating test, because when you look at how is a Republican primary voter getting their information, Fox looms so large in that kind of media, that media ecosphere for them, that if Herman Cain is dominating it, then that may make up for all these organizational deficiencies.
Right. What about Rick Perry? He's now running away from the debates. I mean, I didn't know much about Rick Perry until about a year ago, but as I read his biography, I thought he was a confident, gun-toting cowboy.
Right.
And he's running away from a debate amongst friends?
I think I think the floating of the running away from debate is going to backfire. I do think that you and I were talking about this in my office earlier, which is that there's a fascinating thing happening with Rick Perry, which is his polls are going like this and his fundraising is going like this. he may think, you know what, I'm getting a lot of bad press right now. I was clearly not ready for prime time, but the donor class loves me. So maybe the thing to do is go raise a lot of money and just kind of sit it out and let some of the candidates fall by the wayside. And then when it becomes, everyone panics that Mitt Romney is going to be the nominee and they want that last second look, then I will be there with a huge war chest to run a ton of ads.
So what you're saying basically is that he'll spend the next 6 months practicing some of it, rehearsing his debate performances, improving, maybe even being educated in some of these areas?
Well, that I wouldn't go that far. I think that
okay.
I think that his fundraising prowess allows him to stick around even through poor performance. It doesn't really matter at this point what the polls say because he's raising a lot of money. There's a lot of Republican donors who like what they see in him.
Now, listen, you're spoiling my weekends because you're making me wake up early. And as you know, I watch your show. I email you.
I get an email from you at 9:03
yeah,
on
exactly,
Saturday
saying
morning.
Brilliant normally. What have you got for us this weekend?
We've got a fascinating panel. We got Elliot Spitzer, who you may have heard of.
Elliot Spitzer?
Former governor of New York and former host of a show on CNN.
Okay.
Mort Zuckerman, who is the chair of U.S. News and World
Absolutely.
Report. Ta-Nehisi Coates, a great writer at The Atlantic, and Heather McGee at Demos. We have Glenn Greenwald, who'll be talking about his new book on Sunday. So we've got a great lineup in store.
Chris Hayes, thanks again for joining us. And, of course, you can see Chris on his show, Up with Chris Hayes, weekend mornings, Saturdays at 7 and Sundays at 8 Eastern.